Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and him, Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, hello. It's always nice to talk to you, but we are recording this on Sunday morning, so if we could crack on, because some of us have got an FA Cup draw to watch.
and some of us haven't, and rightly so. We deservedly lost last night, and returned home about 2:00 in the morning, thanks to the wonders of ITV, who decided they wanted the match on television, but didn't want it that much, so they stuck it on ITV4 because it clashed with The Masked Singer.
I know, and even though you did lose, and deservedly, yet still, according to ITV, Graham Potter is the best manager the world of football's ever seen. He's it's incredible their loving continues. It's questions day, Kieran. We do have two news stories to discuss, one much more important than the other. And the first is that professional female footballers in England are to get improved maternity, long-term injury and illness cover under a new agreement between the FA and the PFA. Much improved?
Yeah, it is much improved. And you've got to ask yourself, why has it taken this long to get this far? But let's just be positive. Fair play to the PFA. We spoke recently with regards to the number of female members of the PFA, which is increasing as the WSL and the Championship and so on increase their footprint. Female players will now be able to claim full maternity play for 14 weeks and to have, I think it's 18 months worth of injury cover, which brings them into line with male players. Yeah. And that should be the case. Just because your gender should not dictate what you get paid in terms of if you suffer, something goes wrong at football. It's absolutely nonsense. The historic issue. Now, some people with views that, let's face it, probably aren't in a line with ours, will say, this is the thin end of the wedge, and they're looking for parity in terms of pay. That's complete nonsense. If you talk to people in the women's game, would they like the women players to earn more money? Yes, they do, but they also say they realise that football is a business, and your costs are ultimately driven by income. You get the income up, you can put up the wage costs, and it is starting to move forwards. And whilst we are talking about women in the game, and I know this is slightly tenuous, and let's set partisan things aside. A huge heads up and a huge thank you to everybody at Palace and all their fans who have supported the Just Giving campaign in respect of Hartlepool's manager. So Gemma Lee, who's had a brain tumour, they're trying to raise money in respect of her, and if anybody's listening can contribute as well. This is not about which football club; it's about doing the right thing. And we talk about the football family, and sadly, too many of the stories about sort of the Manson family in terms of the way that they behave towards one another. But I know the club, Palace, and also I believe Palace fans have hugely helped this over the course of the last 48 hours. And anybody that's listening, just giving Gemma Lee's campaign, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the club Crystal Palace on their website on Friday said that they'd made a donation to this crowdfunding effort. She needs £5,000 a month to fund a revolutionary new American treatment. Her prognosis was very poor, and it's getting better. But off the back of that, Palace fans, overnight, the amount raised went from 15,000 to 70,000, which we are very proud of. Palace fans are no different to others, but the demographic of football fans has changed a lot in the past generation. But there is still a lot of middle-aged blokes who support Palace, and there's no one more sentimental than the South London middle-aged bloke. As I'm sure you'll know, I'm sure Uncle Terry shed many a tear as he was kneecapping somebody. Never want to do it. But we are very proud, and every club has a story that's similar. And I think Palace and Hartlepool have built a bond over the past few days, which is another of those things you like to see in football. Just briefly back to the professional female footballers. I was always very impressed, Kieran, when I was a human resources manager in the NHS, in the ambulance service. I was always very impressed with those older uniformed officers who would say, I wish I could get pregnant, just have 10 weeks off for nothing. And it's like, I'm sure if you ask, I'm sure they would let you do it. I'm sure. And if you think it's 10 weeks off for nothing. But anyway, our second story, Kieran, is Finlay okay? Is he wonky chopped up to the eyeballs?
He's very quiet at present.
Oh, is he?
I think he's preening himself for his first social theatrical appearance.
Oh, of course. Well, what better way to lead into our second story, Kieran? Because it's us. Our second story is us. We hope to do a number of live shows across the country this year, and the first ever will be happening on Thursday, the 24th of March, at the home of AFC Wimbledon, the Cherry Red Record Stadium, a.k.a. good old Plough Lane. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, then tickets go on sale at 10 o'clock today. That's the 7th of February, and cost just £10 each. No booking fee. We are absorbing that with producer guys, usually in practical solid gold kitchen towel. Just click on the link in the show notes for the episode or in our Twitter feeds and get your ticket now. Don't forget, you can also come dressed for the occasion, says producer Guy, as our online store, thepriceoffootball.backstreetmerch.com, is selling T-shirts. I don't know which surprised me more, Kieran, the fact that we are still peddling the merchandise, or the idea that thousands of our dear listeners actually are listening before 10 o'clock in the morning. But several people came up to me in the pub before the game yesterday following your tweet and said they were setting the alarm clocks to get up and book tickets. So it would be lovely to see you all. It is only £10 a ticket. £10 is all you will pay, and hopefully we will be seeing you around the country later on. And certainly at least some, if not all of our profits will be going to Rochdale supporters, basically, who are in need of money at the moment. Kieran, should we get on with some questions because we have some crackers?
Absolutely, yeah.
We also have a dangerous precedent set during this questions pod. We're going to have a showdown with producer guy at some stage, or whoever he sends in his place at the live gig. Tom Wooten, talking of human resources, which is not something we often get to say on this pod, but Tom Wooten said, whenever I've started a new place of work, and Tom implies that happens a lot, whenever I've started a new place of work, I've had to spend the first few days reading company policies and doing monotonous health and safety courses. I'm on about to point out, Tom, those are very important. Those were not health and safety courses. Will footballers do something similar? Did Jadon Sancho attend the Man United diversity and inclusion course? Did Jack Grealish learn how to spot a phishing email? And does Lionel Messi know where the fire exits are at PSG? It's a nice light-hearted question, Kieran, but are super rich footballers subject to the same employment rules as mere mortals?
They certainly are, and actually, what they will find is at the first week at the club, especially if it is an overseas player who English isn't going to be their first language a lot of the time, that they will have sort of a glorified PA as far as the club is concerned, who will be taking them through the protocols. In terms of expectations, in terms of social media, training facilities, when do they start, when are they supposed to finish? Footballers' lives are incredibly organised by their employer, because this sounds trite. The clubs don't want the players to think about anything apart from football, so therefore they will try to organise their lives as much as possible, along with the players, a personal management team and so on. And this will extend to the expectations of the club in terms of what they are supposed to know in terms of the club's history. So what you don't want is somebody signing for for Manchester City to come out and tweet or Instagram, it's great to be joining the Red Devils. The club will be very, very keen to make sure that the new employee is completely familiar with everything, because they're also multi-million-pound assets.
Yeah.
And you don't want them reversing their car into somewhere at the club because they've not been shown where the exits are, and potentially getting an injury. So I would say it's actually probably more likely to be taking place at football clubs than many employers.
Yeah, I always remember Neil Ruddock telling me one day that one of the new players, I think it was West Ham, one of the new players was late for training because he'd wanted to buy some tropical fish and he didn't know how to go about it. So it was a crisis, that day's crisis. I have to say my place of work is currently a health and safety nightmare. We're having to store a lot of dad stuff in the office, and this cup of tea is precariously perched for a start. Kieran, the old health and safety me wouldn't be happy. Our next question comes from Jack the Berry fan, which I'm now determined to write a pantomime called Jack the Berry fan. It's a brilliant name for a panto. And Jack the Berry fan says, we all know the difference in prize money between the Champions League and Europa League, and we know it's vast. But I'm wondering what the gap in prize money is between the Europa League and the Europa Conference.
Okay. The Europa League's prize money is 465 million euros, and that is effectively twice that of the Conference League, which is 235. To contextualise them, the Champions League is just over 2 billion. Yeah. So for every £1 in the Conference League, clubs in the Champions League are getting 8, which is why there's such a bun fight between clubs at the top of the Premier League to try to secure one of those 4 places.
Yeah. Our next question, Kieran, comes from Shishir Kulahali, and so does the question after that. And now I'm not happy. I'm really genuinely not happy, Kieran. No disrespect. Go on.
Is this a Patreon benefit that we've not been told about by producer Guy, and he's carving off the profits for himself?
Well, let's not get into what we've not been told about by producer Guy, as we say FA Cup draw coming up. This is not only does it set a dangerous precedent, Kieran, it's really going to annoy all those poor sods who have waited 6 months to get one question asked, and basically Shishir bowls up with 2 questions. Plus, as with the anonymous question last week, I'm not convinced that one of these questions isn't producer Guy's himself that he stepped in. Plus, also, Guy has put in brackets, he's sent on email 2 questions from Shishir Kulahali, brackets, as they're both very good, PG. He started to refer to himself as PG. It's not enough for him to be producer Guy. He's now signing himself off as PG, like some second-rate Bond villain in a volcano in Manchester somewhere, or somebody in a Leonard Rossiter sitcom from the 70s. Anyway, they are good questions. One of them contains a name that Palace fans don't like mentioning, but I shall be bigger than that. And the first question from Shishir says, back in August, Willian reported for pre-season with quite the incredible paunch. Could a club like Arsenal sack a player for not keeping fit pre-season?
The answer is yes. I got in contact with our very good friend of the show, Jonathan Booker, who is an agent, and he says that technically, yes, they probably could sack them, although it would be a pretty brave club to do so, because they would have to prove that the player was unable to perform their duties, and how would they identify the standard required? I mean, you and I are both old enough to remember football in the 70s and 80s, where there was a slightly more casual approach taken by some players to their physique, and it never stopped them playing. And it also gave us hope when we turned up for Sunday League football, looking not quite the best. Jonathan also said, under FIFA regulations, a player refusing to train properly could be found to be an attempt to breach employment contract without just cause. So, if the player is just arsing around and not committing themselves, and certainly, as Brighton fans, we remember 1 or 2 players in our past from about 15, 16 years ago, who I will not name, who were guilty of such an approach and whose game suffered as a result of that. There have been cases where players have been known to, enjoy the odd late night kebab, should we say? And they will have weight and condition clauses in their contracts. And I think you and I both know one of those players, or you know one of those players, and we've had conversations about him. So that is actually quite common, because those players that do perhaps have a more old style lifestyle habits, they will be monitored very carefully by the clubs, and that could be a condition of their contracts.
I was going to ask you to guess which Crystal Palace player was fined every week of his short career at the club for being overweight, but we've actually already mentioned him in the tropical fish story, so you can work it out for yourself. Shishir's second question, and this is quite an interesting one, I think. Adidas have released third kits for Arsenal and Manchester United that are inspired by ones from previous kit makers, Nike and Umbro. Man United, for example, have explicitly stated that their new third kit is a remix of the one made famous by overrated tosser Eric Cantona. Turns out not that intelligent after all. Will Adidas be paying royalties to the original kit makers? And I should stress, by the way, that the overrated tosser bit comes from me, not Shishir. But that's an interesting question. They're talking about a homage or a remix of another company's kit. You'd imagine there would be some kind of intellectual ownership of that kit design from those previous companies, wouldn't you?
I think you'd have to establish just how close. Are you trying to pass off your kit as being the original one? Because if we take a look at clubs, quite often will say this is a reminisce of the year that the first club existed, and so on, and that happens all the time. If it's a complete rip-off, then I think you could go and claim for a breach of copyright, but they normally do just enough. It's a bit like if you've got a record which sounds a bit like another record, the lawyers will get involved. Wasn't it The Verve who would give 100% of their royalties to the Stones, to Andrew Loog Oldham, for their debut single, because it took a few loops from one of the Stones songs. So the lawyers at Adidas will have gone through as to just how much of a copy is not a copy, as it were, to make sure that you don't have to hand across any money to. The last thing that Adidas would ever want to do is give money to Nike. There's no love between those two organisations.
It's rather a crafty move as well by the kit makers, because they know that fans in general, certainly fans of our age, won't buy the current kit. It doesn't fit, for a start off, but they will. They will, of course, admire a retro kit. I'm more likely to buy a retro Palace kit than the current one. Mainly because I don't look particularly good in swirly red and blue stripes. But I think, they are, like you say, they know exactly what they're doing when they release these kits. So, but thank you for those questions, Shishir. And PG, if you are listening, one question at a time, please. Our next question comes from JB, if we're going to play that game. Jake Bergqvist says, it's been reported that Messi will receive some of his PSG salary through their own cryptocurrency. How will this be accreted in any FFP checks? And what's to stop PSG buying back £20 million worth of crypto for $50 million at the end of his contract to inflate his earnings?
Yeah, this is causing consternation at some clubs. I spoke to somebody quite senior. Quite senior in football about this, because the thing about these fan tokens, and there is a lot of confusion: cryptocurrency versus NFTs versus fan tokens. Fan tokens are issued in theory to fans and other interested parties. They like to call themselves investors or traders, but they're actually living at home with their mum and their virgins. Not I'm using sweeping generalisations.
No, of course not.
But in respect of this, clubs issue them. They receive cash, and then they can increase their engagement with the club. And there's you can buy and sell them just like you can buy and sell anything else. And if you buy and sell things, and there's enough things to buy and sell, you create a market. Messi is being used as part of the PSG fan token organisation because it legitimizes and provides interest in the subject. So if you take a look at what happened when Messi signed, the price of the PSG fan token immediately shot up to $50. And since then, it's lost 2/3 of its value. It's down to 16. And somebody put out a couple of days ago a sort of a list of all of the most recent sets of fan tokens, and they're all heading in a southerly direction in terms of value. If people want to do that, then fine. You know, this is what we've always said, but they're not investments. They are a way of, you know, it's another piece of merchandise from a football club. And if you feel that it brings you close to the club, well, go, fair enough, and, you know, fill your boots with them. But I'm very, very wary of considering these things as investments because they're not actually fundamentally linked to anything of value.
Well, the reason I mentioned Palace in that, when you said a lot of people are uneasy, because one of the big conversations yesterday we were having is about, because Palace are releasing their NFTs or whatever they're called on Tuesday to a big fanfare, which is slightly odd because their cryptocurrency shirt sleeve sponsors went bust a couple of weeks ago. They're very bullish about this thing, but the reason people are uneasy is that we don't really know what they are. And it's like the general consensus is people saying, yes, a friend of ours is a lawyer, saying, well, look, if you want to buy them, buy them. As long as the club are clear about what it is you're buying, that's fine. There's not some sort of conspiracy to cheat you. But the thing is that most of us, this is a new area for a lot of us, especially us older fans. So that's why the unease. What about the second part of the question then? What is to stop PSG buying 20 million back?
Probably there's nothing, and this is, you know, I spoke to an executive of one of the football organisations. You know, are you making any plans with regards to this for FFP purposes? And, you know, his reply was, it's on our agenda. You know, we're having to take legal advice because it could be claimed that the football player had bought them in good faith, and therefore, if he makes any profits out of it from another party, then good luck to him. But, you know, the issue with all of these items is they're unregulated, highly volatile, and open to manipulation. And given that central governments and central banks are struggling to come to terms with how to deal with them, to expect the football industry, which ultimately is a small industry, to be able to come up with the perfect solution is going to be a real challenge.
And I guess, Kieran, as well, that tax authorities in various countries across Europe will be keeping a beady eye on this as well, won't they?
Yes, because if they are deemed to be investments, then the profits, as far as the player is concerned, falls within the realms of their income and therefore should be taxable.
Our next question comes from Chris Martin. Probably not that one. Chris, he might be on tour at the moment, idly listening to the price of football, getting in. And as we know from producer Guy, old PG, if anyone's going to jump the queue and get a question asked quicker, it'll be Chris Martin. But anyway, Chris Martin says, what are your opinions about many clubs in the Vanarama National League? Yeah, it's not Chris Martin, is it? Wrexham and Chesterfield, in particular, being able to outbid League 1 and 2 teams so consistently in terms of transfer fees and wages. I mean, effectively, the top half of the National League is League 3 at the moment, Kieran, isn't it, to an extent?
Yeah, I think there's only one club now in the National League itself, which is part-time, and the National League North, the vast majority of the clubs are full-time. And in speaking to one of our mutual friends who's connected to a National League South team, it's less common in National League South. But in terms of opinions, ultimately, there are no financial fair play rules in the National League, which allows club owners, and ultimately this is driven by owners, to accelerate the chances of their club getting promoted through underwriting wage structures which are under normal business circumstances, you would say are unsustainable. Now, Gary Neville did this at Salford City, and if anybody's seen the class of '92 documentaries, which are very entertaining, he's quite honest. He said, "We want to get promoted. Our aim is to get to the Championship, and we're buying our way to it." As much as we can within the rules, and in the National League there were no rules. So if we take a look at what's happened with Wrexham, clearly the club is being funded by Hollywood. They want a bit of Hollywood sprinkle on it, and it's being turned into a Netflix documentary. Well, if they finished 14th in the National League, it's going to be a more difficult sell. So there are benefits in terms of the expected viewing figures if the club does well. So there's sort of a virtuous circle in them spending money, and we are seeing new owners coming into clubs. Chesterfield's been mentioned, Stockport as well, who are top of the National League at present. And I used to go and watch Stockport on a Friday night. When they used to play there regularly, because I lived, when I was living in Manchester, I was living in Stockport for many years. And always,
Kieran, I thought you were going to say tax purposes. Just
it's British Virgin Islands, Luxembourg, and Stockport.
So I don't. I'm not entirely sure I like the sound of a Hollywood sprinkle either. It does. That could go two ways, couldn't it?
That's back to Manscaped.
Indeed. I used to be so fascinated as a youngster. The idea that Stockport and Tranmere played their games on a Friday night, I thought was impossibly glamorous. Just so fake. Did you finish answering that before I interrupted you?
Yeah. These clubs have got owners who are prepared to write out large cheques, which has allowed them to outbid those clubs in League One and League Two, especially those. First of all, we've got the issue of financial fair play does exist under the spectacular salary cap management protocol rules, which, if you are a club in League Two, limits your wage bill to 50% of revenue plus football fortune, which is that's another issue. And some owners in Leagues One and Two, just like many owners in the National League itself, either don't have the resources to subsidise the club, or take the view that the football club should be sustainable. Because we were talking to Dale Vince last week, and one of the things he was very keen to promote was the idea of owners being custodians and therefore not being over dependent upon that on one person when that one person potentially moves on. So what you don't want to do is to just walk away from a club because of personal circumstances, or if you get bored. Mel Morris.
All right, okay. Our next question comes from Tom Metcalf, and Tom's a Bristol Rovers fan. And he says that Bristol Rovers, like many clubs, have a supporters club which is run by volunteers. But there's been a bit of a furore recently as the club has been taking some of the supporters club stuff in-house. Is there any advantage to the club for doing this, as the supporters club was donating all the money to them anyway?
In respect to this, first of all, the work done by many supporters clubs is absolutely fantastic. They are unsung heroes, and you know from your experience, Kevin, that when perhaps something is started up, you've got dozens and dozens of people who want to get involved, and then within 6 months you're down to a hardcore of people doing all of the heavy lifting. The issue in terms of should certain aspects be run in-house is that it could be that the people in the supporters club don't have the necessary specific experience in a particular role to maximise what's best for the club financially. So, in terms of fundraising, in terms of commercial planning, sponsorship and things like that, you might be better off with somebody who's actually come from the industry, who is being paid a salary by the club, and also has the ability to look at it from a non-partisan perspective. Because when we look at our clubs and when we try and do something from our clubs, we are doing it with red and blue striped or blue and white striped lenses in our eyes, and that can sometimes be counterproductive, because we might be focusing on things on a short-term basis, and you need to take a more strategic view and so on. Also, from the club's point of view, is that if activities are being run by the supporters club, the ability of the board of directors to have a chain of command and sort of allocation of responsibilities is very limited. Whereas if things are being run in-house, then you've got a line manager to whom you report, to who you have discussions with. And sometimes that can get a little bit blurred by the supporters clubs. And again, what supporters clubs do is absolutely fantastic because a lot of the stuff they do, I'm so proud of all of those clubs, especially I work in Liverpool. The work done at both Everton and Liverpool in terms of their food bank activities, some of the social enterprise work done at Tranmere, it literally makes you cry with pride to know that people who love the sport that you love behave in such a way and are making such a great contribution.
Yeah. Well, it also makes you cry with anger that they need to have to do it in the first place, to be honest. But
yes,
Speaking of kits, what was that colour you were wearing last night? I believe they said it was teal.
Well, it was a teal. It was a colour that, if you were colourblind, meant that you were fucked.
Well, I thought that might be the case. Roses are red, violets are blue. Don't let a wild pube wreck you. Valentine's Day is just round the corner, and our sponsors and old friends Manscaped are here for you with the best tools to get your balls ready for the special occasion. I still think Ali may prefer a meal. This Valentine's Day, it's time to join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code PRICEOFFOOTBALL for 20% off plus free shipping.
The Performance Package 4.0 comes equipped with the best tools needed when freshening up for a night on the town. Inside, you'll find the signature Lawnmower 4.0. Its advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks on your delicate nuts. It also comes equipped with a 4000K LED spotlight that's bright enough to shine a light to your true love this year. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker, a nose and ear hair trimmer to whack off the worst of all your weeds, and 2 free gifts.
So get 20% off and free shipping with the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL at manscaped.com. That's 20% off when you're taking 100% off your balls with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PRICEOFFOOTBALL. Help tame that love jungle you have in your pants with Manscaped.
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
And talking to Liverpool, John Gillespie asked us this question. Liverpool now have a partnership with Think Markets, their new global trading partner. What do you know about them? The club statement talks about providing Think Markets with digital assets. What does that mean? And other than pure income benefit, what are the ways Liverpool will benefit from partnering with a financial trading markets platform?
Well, first and foremost, this is a financial relationship. Think Markets get access. We sometimes do sign up with organisations if they've got our club's badge on it. So from and that's why sponsors do it. Sponsors do not sponsor football clubs for love. The vast majority of the time, it's purely a commercial arrangement. I've done a little bit of research into Think Markets. They allow you to buy and sell investment assets, and there are many alternatives. If you're just using them as a platform, they are probably no better or no worse than other platforms. Let the buyer beware. They're not there necessarily to give you. I don't think they are. They're not registered financial advisors. So So that's fine. In relation to what John said with regards to digital assets, this is where we're going back to our previous discussion with regards to the tokens, fan engagement, that clubs are desperate to legitimise, because we have reached, as far as football is concerned, we've reached a peak. They can't realistically charge more money for tickets, because football is still a game of the people, and people are starting to creep in terms of the prices being demanded. The TV companies have said, we're paying you a lot of money, we ain't going to pay you a lot more. So the glory days of what we saw in 2014 and 2017, where the Premier League domestic deals went up by 70% on both occasions, those days have gone as well. So how else can they get money? It's got to be through something new, and this is where digital assets come in. So are they going to be fan tokens? Are they going to be NFTs? Liverpool, I think, are tentatively sort of trying to gauge the reaction from their fan base. And I think you and I, we're both familiar with the people like the Anfield Rap and Spirit of Shankly, who fantastically articulate the views of the hardcore Liverpool support from Merseyside, and I think the clubs would have to go very, very carefully, because these organisations are very protective of Liverpool as a city, as a brand, as a football club, and so on. And they will push back if they think that the club is trying to simply monetize football fans' loyalty beyond what we consider to be reasonable. Merchandise, if people want to get a set of glorified Panini stickers with Liverpool players on, fantastic. But that's what it is. It's not an investment.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Ben Evans. And Ben says, I know that the EFL TV deal is sold to Sky as a bundle for the three leagues and the League Cup. But what is the point of Sky having the rights for League One and Two when they only tend to show these games during an international break? Surely they can't be worth that much to the TV deal. So why don't the EFL just sell the Championship to Sky and find another broadcast partner for League One and Two?
Well, I think this is something which has been considered in the past. And in fact, some of the club owners in the Championship have suggested this. They feel that the £119 million a season that Sky currently get is underpricing the value of the product. But when you actually dig into it, I spoke to some people in broadcasting to say, well, what's your view with regards to this? And the reply was, well, actually, Sky like the Championship. It's a decent enough product, but the average viewing figures 178,000 for a Championship match. Now, in the SPFL, it's 283,000.
Yeah.
So you go, well, so therefore. And if you take a look at the value of the SPFL deal, it's not particularly high. So they think, half to 2/3 of the value of the deal is coming from the League Cup, because the final, the semi-finals, which the EFL are desperate to preserve as two-legged, because it genuinely contributes towards their total money. And the big fear, of course, is that with the Swiss-style Champions League, which is going to result in more Champions League matches taking place, where is the future of the League Cup? I think it would be a challenge. Although, perhaps if the clubs that qualify for the Champions League don't play in the League Cup, and we get 6 teams from Scotland playing it could still be a really attractive proposition.
Oh, I'd love an away trip to Scotland.
Yeah. So and if this does go ahead, can we just say that we had first dibs on the idea? And we're not looking for 190 million quid, but a curry at least.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Andy Adams. I don't know which team Andy supports, but it sounds to me like he's been in the Porter's arms recently because this is a subject of much discussion. And Andy says, why are clubs pushing digital season tickets? What are the advantages? Especially as it's not very inclusive when it comes to those fans who don't have or don't want smartphones. Clubs talk about Premier League guidelines, and Palace have certainly done this, claiming that they've had to do it because of Premier League guidelines. But reading them, there's no mention of digital season tickets. So why the rush? And certainly at Palace, you know, Kieran, being freelance, it's feast or famine. And in previous years, I've had to use 3 or 4 separate cards to pay for my season ticket. But this year, lovely, just happened to have some money, bowled down there, paid for my season ticket. Couldn't wait to come back 2 days later to collect the card. And within that 2 days, they phoned up to say, "Oh, we're going digital. We're being forced by the Premier League." But this unseemly rush, certainly for the first 2 or 3 home games, caused absolute chaos. So, and no one could quite understand what is the benefit to the club, especially as Selhurst Park's in a bit of a bowl and the Wi-Fi is not good there anyway.
Yeah, the potential benefits of the club, first of all, there is a cost benefit. They don't have to physically send them out. You send out 20,000, the price of a first-class stamp, the price of printing the cards. If you can do all of that digitally, it does actually work out benefit. What happens if you lose your card? Then that has to be replaced. Secondly, there's the issue of touting. There are, I've said this on more than one occasion. I know a tout in Manchester who can get up to 80 tickets.
Wow.
For Old Trafford.
Right.
And that's the way the system operates. And Manchester United gets an awful lot of international fans who are prepared to pay top dollar. So what would happen is, if you're a hardcore Red, the international fans come to watch Manchester United. Now, if it is Manchester United, and this is no disrespect, playing Burnley or Brighton or Palace, and it's 12:30 on a Saturday, they might think, well, I just can't be asked.
Yeah.
And therefore what they do is, everyone knows who the touts are. You phone the tout, he sends a runner around, picks up your card, sells that to a football tourist for 70, 80 quid, and then they've got spotters. So they know where the seats are. So the football tourist goes and sits in that particular seat, and then the spotter just pops down and says, right, I'll have the ticket back now. So everything works smoothly.
Yeah.
It becomes more complicated to do that with regards to digital tickets. Now, more complicated is not the same as impossible, by the way. So that's one thing that the clubs are a little bit concerned about, because there's football's not been covering itself in glory recently in terms of the way that fans have been behaving, and if it stops people who shouldn't be in the grounds getting into the grounds, that's a further issue. So there's legal issues, there's touting issues, there's cost savings, but also data mining. If the club has got a digital record of you, they will know what time does Kevin Day rock up to Selhurst Park on a Saturday. And if they can work out, all of a sudden they say, well, people within a 2-mile radius of the ground are turning up on average at 2:36. People who are season tickets who are 10 miles away, they're turning up 45 minutes. And then you can start to, in your marketing, you can start to target those people. You can start to send them specific offers. If you turn up at the ground an hour beforehand instead of 45 minutes, you can get an extra pint out of you. We'll give you 10% off of the price of a pint, and it's all part of information has value to football clubs, and they are constantly trying to work out ways of mining that data that they have about you to either commercially exploit themselves or to sell on to third parties.
It's a matter of record what time I get to Selhurst Park, 2 to 3. I've always been very open about the fact I get this far. Although the problem is there are conspiracy theorists at every club who say, because certainly a lot of people I know earlier in the season were getting to the ground an hour before they normally would because the queues had been so long. So they're getting in half an hour before they normally would. So they're buying 2 pints at the club rather than 2 pints at the pub. But also, do you know what the club don't understand, Kieran? I phoned up for my FA Cup ticket last week, talked to the lad I normally talk to, lovely young fellow, Ryan, and went paid for the ticket. And he says, I'll send that across, the e-ticket. It's like, no, I want to go to Selhurst Park. Any excuse I can get to go to Selhurst Park and do something is great. But I just next minute the ticket was there on the computer, and it's like, oh, I've got an excuse to go to Selhurst Park. Our next question is something I think fans all over the country, certainly bigger Premier League clubs, will be talking about to themselves or to their friends. It comes from a Wolves fan called Jack Tolley, and if ever there is a Wolves fan name, it's Jack Tolley. That's a proper black country name, isn't it? Jack Tolley. Jack says, as a Wolves fan, should I have feelings of unease supporting a club owned by a Chinese company? How closely linked are Chinese companies to a government that's regularly accused of human rights abuses? Well, I think, Jack, before I get Kieran involved in this, any level of unease is yours to decide, basically. I'm lucky enough at the moment, my club are in good hands, very good hands, but two of the owners were high-profile donators to Brexit groups, which makes you slightly uneasy, but that's fine. That helped their popularity with a lot of Palace fans, that they were pro-Brexit. We had an owner in Simon Jordan who I used to get terribly ashamed by some of the stories I'd hear from other club staff about the boorish way in which Simon Jordan behaved, and it used to make me feel ashamed until I worked out it was down to him to feel ashamed and me to feel angry, basically, about him, the name that our club was getting because of some of his antics. But the Wolves that you support is the Wolves that one of the most famous clubs in Europe in the 50s. The European Cup came about because of Wolves' antics. Yours is the Wolves of Billy Wright and Derek Dougan and Steve Ball. So that's who you support, regardless of who owns your club at the moment. You support that team with that most famous traditional of shirts. So keep on supporting them. And yes, you should have. If you have feelings of unease, they should be made known to the club. But as we're always saying, as Man United fans always ask us to say, can we say the Glazers and not Manchester United? Because it's them that are making the decisions, not Manchester United. So, but in terms of his actual, how closely linked, Kieran, are Chinese companies to the government? Because one would assume that very closely is the answer.
The Chinese government is keen for companies to be successful. And that has had a very positive impact upon the Chinese economy as far as many of the cities are concerned. Not as much so as far as the agriculture areas of China. So China is very much sort of two-speed. There has to be approval of certain activities by companies. So are there links? Yes. Are those links closer than we see between the UK government and individual companies? Yes, they are, but it doesn't mean that they are directed by. So there's sort of there is a relationship. But I would agree entirely with your assessment of this. Jack supports Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club. You have to separate the clubs from the owners. And this is something that Derby County fans have come to terms with in recent. When I'm always at pains to point out you can love Derby County and hate Mel Morris, and the two things are not mutually exclusive, or are mutually exclusive as such. So the owners can make you proud and shameful. But that doesn't mean that the club should be proud or shameful or be treated in such a way. Although, in the Punch and Judy world of social media, that's what happens. And if you actually articulate things correctly, then I think you can separate the two, because football clubs are fantastic institutions because, for the reasons that we've gone on and on and on. History, heritage, sense of identity, and so on. And that doesn't come from the owners. That comes from the clubs and your dads and your granddads and all of the relatives and your mums who've sewn the badges on shirts when you were a kid and so on. And that's why you love the club, not due to the owners. You can love your owners as well, but that's a separate issue.
The club's a concept, basically, and it's hard to describe to non-football fans, but the club as a concept, every club as a concept, is bigger than the owners. Our final question comes from Andrew Church, and this is This is right up your street, Kieran. I'm sure PG kept this till last just to keep you entertained and alert. It comes from Andrew Church, and Andrew Church says, with a financial fair play system based on profit loss accounting, you will always be battling creative accountants and owners finding weird and wonderful ways to inject positive numbers into the profit line. So I had a thought. Forget about profit, loss, revenue, etc. Why not simply put restrictions on the amount of debt a club can have? Instead, this would prevent clubs being spent into the ground, but also allow the wealthiest owners to inject as much cash as they like without having to buy club assets for inflated prices, sponsor their own clubs using fake taxi firms, etc. Correct me if I'm wrong, but debt is the real issue at mishandled clubs, is it not? Now, I'm just going to sit back. I'll sit back a yard or two here, Kieran. I'll let you deal with this. Off you go.
Right. In terms of Andrew's first point, a profit or break-even based financial fair play system is open to manipulation and abuse. And certainly when it was first created, I know I've said this before, I sat down the first day, looked at the rules, came up with 10 schemes.
Yeah.
Finley's just walked in the room to listen to my epistle here. And I've always said, if I can do it, and I'm just a teacher, then when you get the really smart people from the silver-tongued fraternity and the big firms of accountants, for every one scheme I can come up with, they can come up with 100. So it is open to abuse. So what about debt? Right, this is my view of debt. There is nothing wrong with debt. I was at the Spurs stadium last night. It is magnificent. It has been funded by debt. The debt does not have to be repaid until 2051. So we've got, let's face it, chances are you and I are not going to be around. There's a fair chance that you and I are not going to be around when it comes to that debt having to be repaid. And also, I think Spurs will probably just knock it down the road for another 20 years. Yeah. So debt is not a problem. It is servicing debt that is a problem, and it is cash flow which causes clubs to go out of business, just like all other business. I used to work in insolvency a long, long time ago, and all that I would focus upon was order books and future cash, and to identify whether or not the club can you meet next month's wage bill, can you pay your creditors, can you make your next tax bill coming up, and so on. So I don't think a debt-based approach would necessarily be better. Manchester United have a lot of debt. Manchester United are a very successful football club. Spurs, the same. We've got some clubs which have relatively little debt, but they've got wage bills which are twice the amount of income. That's a problem. That's a cash flow problem. Yeah. So it looks as if there will be changes. I think Andrew is right that the existing system is probably not fit for purpose. But the noises we are seeing coming out of UEFA is that they will be effectively going for something that similar to what Andrew has suggested, in the sense that allowing owners to put as much money in as they want. Now, if this comes to prevent a ridiculously wealthy sovereign wealth fund from buying football as such, it seems to be that some other sports are about to be bought, which involve hitting a ball, albeit a smaller ball than the football. Yeah. If they want to do that, then we tax that in some way within the football industry. So if you're going to pay wages which are more than 70% of income, fill your boots, but for every £100 of extra wages you're paying, you get taxed £50, and that either goes to other clubs or goes to grassroots football, or whatever it's going to be. So if you're rich enough to afford to subsidise football clubs to a significant level, then you either have to invest in the rest of the industry via some form of tax, or end up supporting grassroots from a central fund into which that money goes. So that would be my approach. But he's absolutely right. We've currently got owners putting out press releases, and there are counter press releases coming from other institutions as well, and it's all getting a little bit tawdry with regards to how things are going on, and there's employees who are fearful for loss of jobs, and there are fans fearful for loss of their clubs, and that's wrong. That's not right.
Yeah, the other sport you mentioned, that's golf. Presumably, you're talking about
that is
which is
the Saudi government's about to buy golf.
Yeah, they've launched an alternative tour, which, as you say, is probably going to engulf the traditional one. It does seem odd, Kieran, doesn't it? That, as you say, that Spurs stadium is magnificent, but it's odd to believe or to think that in 50 years' time it still won't be paid for.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, if when we first bought our house, we took out 25, 30-year mortgage, and
fair point, I suppose. Yeah.
So I'm not in the first house, so I've still got a mortgage, and it's best part of 40 years since I bought my first house, so it's no different for a club.
Yeah, this is the bit where producer guy's looking up the word mortgage. What does that mean? What, haven't paid cash? Thank you for listening. If you'd like to make a small donation to our always free to air podcast, and that'd be very kind of you, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have any questions for us, one at a time, please, Shashir. It's questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, once again, folks, thanks for all the feedback. Thanks for all the good things you say about us and the bad things as well, because we need to take on board all valid viewpoints. If you want to support the show, the Patreon route is one. Coming along to see us at Plough Lane would be another. And as you say, we've been in contact, or we've had contact with Rochdale Football Club, Rochdale AFC, and we are going to try to financially support from that first show. We've got to make a profit first. Yeah, I've got to be honest. And if we sell 12 tickets, we're Donald Duck. So please, you're not supporting us. You're helping support. And what's happened at Rochdale is a stain on football in terms of the way that that club's being treated by so-called investors or potential investors. If you just want to give us some good karma, just go along to your app, Apple. I'm reluctant to say the word Spotify at present. But if you can give us a review, apparently it's the number of stars that count to a large extent. And you can say whatever you want. You could say you would rather have the show presented by the Phantom Flanflinger from Tiswas and Roy Keane. I think that'd be quite feisty. I'd pay money. I'd sign up for Patreon for that.
I'm trying to work out who'd win in that fight. I think Roy Keane would quite enjoy that, actually. I think he might start chuckling a bit. We'll discuss this further off air, Kieran. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.